Jane Bowen was a simple Texas girl whose life took a dramatic turn when she met the notorious outlaw John Wesley Hardin. Jane was just an ordinary girl from Texas, living a fairly uneventful life. That was until she crossed paths with a man whose name would become synonymous with danger and violence: John Wesley Hardin. Their romance was as unlikely as it was intense. Jane, with her quiet charm and gentle spirit, was the polar opposite of Hardin, a man whose reputation for violence preceded him. Yet there was a connection, an inexplicable pull between these two vastly different individuals. Their courtship was a whirlwind, a mix of stolen moments and hushed whispers set against the backdrop of a Texas that was still grappling with the aftermath of the Civil War. Eventually, they made the decision to intertwine their lives forever, and Jane became Mrs. John Wesley Hardin. In saying "I do," Jane not only accepted Hardin as her husband, but also the life that came with him. It was a life that was as far removed from her own as could be. Hardin's world was one of constant danger, a world where the threat of death was always looming. And so, Jane Bowen became Mrs. John Wesley Hardin, embarking on a journey she could never have imagined. Married life for Jane Bowen was far from typical. With Hardin constantly on the run, Jane had to adapt to a life filled with uncertainty and danger. Imagine your spouse being pursued relentlessly by law enforcement, with each passing day bringing the unnerving possibility of capture or worse, death. This was the reality for Jane. Hardin, notorious for his violent streak, was a wanted man. He had a knack for trouble and a reputation that preceded him. His life was a tumultuous whirlwind of shootouts, jailbreaks, and narrow escapes. This was not a life Jane could have envisioned when she said, "I do." Living under the shadow of Hardin's notoriety must have been a trying ordeal for Jane. The constant upheaval, the fear, the anxiety, it's hard to fathom the kind of emotional toll it took on her. Yet she was not just a wife, but also a mother. Amidst the chaos, Jane had to provide a semblance of normalcy for their children, a task as daunting as it was necessary. Despite the constant upheaval, Jane remained by Hardin's side, a testament to her loyalty, or perhaps her lack of options. Living with the notorious outlaw was far from easy, but what did Jane really think of her husband? Jane Bowen, wedded to the infamous John Wesley Hardin, found herself in a life of uncertainty and danger, punctuated by her husband's violent exploits. From what we know, Jane's feelings towards Hardin were a complex tapestry of emotions. On the one hand, she was married to a man who was constantly on the run, a man whose name struck fear in the hearts of many. On the other, he was the father of her children, a man she had chosen to share her life with. Historical accounts paint a picture of a woman who, despite the tumultuous circumstances, stood by her husband. Yet it's hard to imagine that she fully embraced Hardin's lifestyle. Did she live in fear of the day her husband's past would catch up to them? Or did she find a strange sense of pride in his reputation, seeing him as a symbol of defiance against a system they both disagreed with? There are also those who speculate that Jane yearned for a quieter, more peaceful life, away from the chaos that seemed to follow Hardin wherever he went. It's possible she wished for a different existence, one where she could raise her children without the looming threat of danger. Jane Bowen, the outlaw's wife, was a woman of strength and resilience, navigating a life that was as unpredictable as her husband. The story of Jane Bowen and John Wesley Hardin is one of love, fear, and survival. As we've journeyed through the tumultuous life of Jane Bowen, wife of notorious outlaw John Wesley Hardin, we've seen a woman grappling with the complexities of her husband's lifestyle. Let's take a moment to reflect on the remarkable challenges she faced. Jane, a woman caught in the crossfire of her husband's violent escapades, constantly on the run and living under the shadow of his notoriety. Yet she remained by his side, a testament to the strength of her commitment, or perhaps the complexity of her predicament. In the midst of the chaos, Jane experienced a spectrum of emotions towards her husband. From love and devotion to fear and doubt, her feelings were as complex as the man she married. She bore witness to his violent deeds, experienced the relentless pursuit of law enforcement, and yet she stood by him through thick and thin. Now we turn the question to you, our viewers. Given the circumstances, what do you think of Hardin's wife? How would you feel if you were in her shoes? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below.